Hi, I'm Darlene Carman.
And I'm Doug Carman.
And welcome to the show. Elaine Miller Bond is an author, photographer, and illustrator. Her work has appeared on the Discovery Channel, and her publishing credits include Science, BBC Earth News, The Washington Post, and popular social media. She wrote and illustrated 2 books that cover 64 animals and affirmations titled Affimals. She is the photographer of this book, The Utah Prairie Dog, Life Among the Red Rocks by Theodore G. Manno. Hey, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Darlene, Doug.
Yeah. Now, your education, you've got several college degrees, one from the University of California in Berkeley and one from the University of Cambridge in England. And you started out as a science writer. So has writing always been your vocation?
Yes, it really has. Believe it or not, I started writing in about the 3rd grade. And unbeknownst to me, my teacher in the 3rd grade took one of the poems I wrote about the city lights in Berkeley, like the holiday lights, and had it published by the Oakland Tribune.
Wow.
And then
good.
I always felt like I was a little, I always felt I was a little ahead in writing. I did well on essays, and I was in the public speaking and debate team, and I wrote and memorized my own speeches in high school. But everybody tells you you're never going to make a living as a writer. It's almost like a meme out there. And so when I was at Cal and I was taking English, you know, because I liked the writing, and I was also taking geography because I love animals and the environment and our earth. And at one point, the late, wonderful Professor Bernard Nietzschman pulled me aside in office hours. And he said, you know, Elaine, you're ahead in writing. And the way I see it, you have 1 or 2 ways you can go. You can either do the research yourself on the animals or the earth or aspects of geography that interest you, or you can be the person who writes about the research that other people do. And that really planted a seed.
Wow.
So when I got out of UC Berkeley, my first job actually was as an environmental editor and writer for the UC Natural Reserve System. And I think it's because of teachers like him that really planted the seed.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Well, you had to do a tremendous amount of research for your affirmable books. 64 animals in all. How long did that take you to do all that writing? Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, the affirmations like Puma, get more pounds to the ounce, or something like the prairie dog, give kisses, those affirmations sort of came to me. But for each animal and each affirmation, I wrote a little story, and for each book, it took about a year.
Oh,
it might seem like a lot of time, but
it is.
The way I sort of have a method, and what I do is I interview the researchers who work with the prairie dogs or with the hummingbirds or with the millipedes, and I also read books. And there's a certain point when you know you're ready to write, and that is when you can see the wolverine padding through the snow. You can see a reindeer losing pace with its herd, or the salt marsh harvest mouse. It's one of my favorite animals that I researched. And I could see the tide rolling in, and the salt marsh harvest mouse, this endangered mouse that lives in the San Francisco Bay marshes,
yes,
it'll scramble up to higher ground when the tide comes in, or it'll climb up a plant. And movies will start to run in my head, and then I write what I see in the movies. And
you research in the field as well. You go out and see these animals, right?
Yeah, some of my experience, like with the wolves, was from watching them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about writing is that when I'm stuck in writing, it's always, always, always for the same reason. And that is I don't have enough information. You know, my mind will go down this track and then stop, or my mind will go down this track and then stop. And so this tells me I need to go back and do more interviewing or do more reading. And that's how it unlocks the ability to continue.
Well, you know, what I notice about the book is, like, when I read the affirmation, then it would stick with me in my head. And every time I saw the animal again, I would think of the affirmation. So were there any affirmations that stumped you?
Well, I take that, first I want to say it's a compliment that you remember the affirmations.
All of them.
Because some of them I remember as well. Like one of my favorites is the American beaver, and the affirmation for that is still the waters. And ever since I did research on the beaver and wrote about the beaver, I no longer think of them as damming up a river. I think of them as creating a pond,
yes,
you know, for fish and birds and other wildlife. In terms of stumping me, there's one affirmation from the first book, The African Elephant, And the affirmation I came up with pretty easily is keep on trunkin'.
Oh.
But it was kind of a hard story to write because in the beginning I did my research like I always do, and I read about the elephant's trunk. It's this miraculous appendage that, you know, when the elephant wants to, it can use it. It has the power to uproot a tree, but it also has the intricacy and delicacy to pick 2 blades of grass. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting, but is that what Keep on Trunkin' is really about? And when those movies started playing in my head, I imagined the elephants going to an elephant graveyard and feeling all those emotions and then moving on together.
Yeah.
And then I thought about the elephants crossing a river and making sure everybody got across and then moving on together. And then I imagined the different dangers that like a baby elephant might face, like a hungry lion, and the elephants all forming a line to protect the baby. And then they move on together. And so what really I thought about with this affirmation was the deeper meaning of Keep on Trunkin', and that was persistence.
Oh yes, and they are very persistent. Well, you have 2 books here that have the affirmals, and both of them, and we have. But instead of showing through here, I thought we'd just show a couple of the illustrations.
And
this
you
first
did these
one,
illustrations for the...
Yes.
I did. I used photos as references, and some are my own photos that
So
I
the
used as
puma,
references.
would you like to read a passage from your book?
I surely would. Thank you for asking. Actually, the reason the puma is one of my favorites is because I feel like this book could be subtitled For the Love of Predators. If you think about it, wolves, coyotes, black bears, sharks, big cats, where in the world are they welcome? You know, they come in conflict with people and with livestock, and with people and livestock taking up more and more of the earth. Where do these predators have a place to go? So I thought of this book as a way to give voice to the predators, and so this is my little ode to the puma with Get More Pounce to the Ounce.
Like it.
A deer grazes in a meadow, but like a puff of smoke, a puma curls in and out of the rocks, undetected. Crouching low in the grass, the cat moves closer in slow motion, head stretched forward, legs wound tight, eyes fixed on the animal grazing within the pounce zone. Timing needs to be paw perfect, and when the puma finally springs into action, its whiskers jut forward like a brush of feelers. Its paw pads touch the deer's fur, using the direction of its hairs as a guide to the head and neck. The hunt ends with just one bite.
Very nicely written, and it just gives you an example of your writing style, which I think is really cool. Now, we have another one here.
Yeah, this one, I thought was really clever.
It's a nautilus.
Oh, thank you. That's the chambered nautilus. I'm glad that's one of your favorites because one of the other, I would say, themes of the book is to celebrate some of the more forgotten animals. Everybody loves a beautiful pearl. It's a gem. But do we think of the pearl oyster that created it?
Yeah,
You know?
it's true.
Or everybody loves coral, you know, but we think of it as these like gardens in the sea that are kind of rocky, but a lot of people don't realize that coral is actually an animal. It's a tiny polyp that has plants that live in its body that give it energy, and it builds that calcium carbonate home that we know of as coral. And so the chambered nautilus was something I was very excited to research because we're more familiar, if we look at the picture of the chambered nautilus, we're more familiar with it with the markings of a mathematical spiral, a logarithmic spiral. And the spiral of the nautilus shell is the same spiral we see in the starry arms of galaxies and whirlpools, in the seed heads of a sunflower. So I was really curious to learn about the animal, which is on the other side there. And
There it is.
where does it live? What does it eat? It turns out it's about 500 million years old, this animal. It's older than fish, and it's a relative of squid and octopus. And it's just a very fascinating animal. It lives in very deep water, and at nighttime...
Very symmetric, and that's kind of like, like you said, you find it in so many other things within
The pattern.
Right,
Yeah.
the harmonious pattern. And I was just fascinated with the animal and its life, and so I wanted to give it. And the affirmation for the chambered nautilus is let inspiration spiral around you.
Well, of course, you know my favorite which is
The earthworm.
the earthworm. Stay grounded.
Stay grounded.
Oh, I can relate to that. I can relate to that so much. But what I liked about the earthworm, the illustration, most people can visualize an earthworm. All you have to do is dig in your yard and you'll find one. But the thing about that is something that probably all of us could find in our own yard if we do a little digging. And what's your thoughts about the earthworm?
Well, I really like it because it's another one of the forgotten animals, and it's really accessible.
Yes.
And little kids
Very
like it.
accessible. Go out
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Everybody can find an earthworm.
Yeah, little kids like it, and they do a lot of good for the environment. I mean, if you think about it, it's a noodly creature. It's soft, and it doesn't even have eyes. And how is it when we get down to dig through hard clay, we're getting calluses on our hands and bruises on our knees, but they can just munch right through that stuff.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, they're sort of hydraulic little machines. They have sometimes 10 pairs of hearts that pump a fluid, and that's what gets them going. And also, as they go forward through the soil, they take a bite of earth, and the soil passes through their digestive tract and comes back as really rich soil for the plants.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and as it turns out, the slime of their trails is also like, has microbial life that's beneficial to the plants too.
Oh wait, now I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I didn't read that. I didn't read that in the book. So it helps the plants.
Yeah, something about the slime of their trails, just everything about what they do. It's a forgotten part of our world.
I would ask you about snails, but I know it's not in the book. But I'm just thinking of slime here. This is, makes me wonder. Well, that's another one for you to research in the future.
Silver linings to the next book.
Yeah, that would be another one. Well, is there any other one that you would like to talk about, or is that over?
Well, just one of the other ones that one of my favorite illustrations is right here. It's the greater flamingo. And one thing I learned from doing that book, that affirmation, was keep your balance. That was my affirmation for the flamingo.
Very funny.
And one thing I learned by doing 64 animals and 64 affirmations, like keep your balance, is that I had to take my own advice. Like, this story was a little bit hard for me to write as well because I wanted to balance the life of the chicks with the life of the adults, migratory behavior versus staying at home, and why they stand on one leg. So I had to balance all the information and essentially follow my own advice.
Well, it's very cool. I like all the animals, but 64. Let's move on to prairie dogs.
Oh.
And we're going to see some pictures in just a minute, but at first I'd like to know, how did you get involved? Tell us the story, how you got involved with prairie dogs.
Oh, thanks for asking, because it's a really serendipitous and also pretty sentimental story to me. For the first time I went to Utah was in 2004, and I was camping in Bryce Canyon. And I know you've been there. It's a gorgeous place, and anybody who goes to Bryce will be awestruck by its beauty. But just outside the gates, I noticed this sign that used to be on the highway, and it said Prairie Dog Highway. And I thought, this is the high, semi-arid desert forest. I didn't know that there'd be prairie dogs here. I thought they lived in the heartland, in the grasslands of, Oklahoma and Nebraska. Exactly. So I decided, let's take a day and go looking for prairie dogs. Well, to make a long story short, there were a lot of miles on the car and a lot of hours, and we didn't see all that many prairie dogs. There were few and far between. So when I got back to Bryce Canyon, I went up to the ranger and I said, what about these prairie dogs? And she said, oh, well, here in Utah, we have special prairie dogs. We have prairie dogs that are threatened with extinction. And she says, and the world's expert on these Utah prairie dogs speaks one night a year. And she checked her clipboard and she says, and it starts in an hour in the lodge.
Oh, just so happens.
Yeah, so I went to his talk, and it's Dr. John Hoagland. He's been researching prairie dogs in the field for over 40 years. After his fascinating presentation, I introduced myself. We knew some of the same people from my old job at the University of California. And he turned to me and he said, Elaine, how would you like to take the photos for my next book?
Fantastic.
Just like that.
Just like that. A year later, I was there with my big camera and learned how to take learned how to do photography by doing the book for him.
Well, see,
Well,
this
this
is
was your introduction to
yes.
professional photography then.
This is what amazes me because we've had a lot of very good photographers,
we have.
wildlife photographers. So when I saw your work and found out that this was your first book, I'm telling you, some of these pictures are just awesome. Let's see some. Let's see some pictures.
Oh, great.
Bryce Canyon, I think, will be coming
Yeah.
up first, but pictures of Bryce Canyon and the prairie dogs. There you go.
That's it. That's the beautiful Bryce Canyon. It's the well-known amphitheater, badlands. These are special landforms called hoodoos.
Yes.
But in the next slide, we'll see the area outside Bryce Canyon. This is sort of the land of the prairie dog. It's sort of a high, or the Utah Prairie Dog. It's high prairie, there are grasses, there's sagebrush, and this is the area where I spent hours looking for prairie dogs.
And you got a rainbow in there.
Yeah, this was on a subsequent trip, a double rainbow, and it really meant something
Awesome.
to me.
And the next one is like,
Oh, here we go. Now we
Baby
got-
prairie dogs. What could be cuter than that? These are the pups, and prairie dogs are born underground. Their mother takes care of them and nurses them underground, and at about 6 weeks of age, they pop up to the surface for the very first time.
so these are youngsters.
These are youngsters. This is their first or second day out in the sunlight, and they're in their hole there.
Oh, so cute.
And most people think that prairie dogs breed like rabbits, and they really don't. A lucky mom will have 1 litter a year and maybe 2 or 3.
Yes.
So,
So they're not that prolific as far as reproducing them.
right,
Oh, cute.
exactly. And in the
So-
next slide, we'll see what prairie dogs are really famous for, and that's kissing.
Oh, love.
Love is in the air, on the ground.
This is how prairie dogs meet and greet each other. And one thing about kissing, there's another behavior that looks a lot like kissing, and it's called territorial dispute. What they're doing here is they're gnashing teeth and they're identifying one another, but 2 males might do that. And if they're gnashing teeth a little too long, it's not exactly a kiss, they might suddenly explode in a fight or a chase.
Ooh.
So as a photographer who likes to shoot action, it's good to know your animal so you can anticipate the shots. Like in this next shot, I know this is one of Darlene's favorites.
This is definitely the dancers.
That's the dance.
Yeah, one of the producers made the joke, is that prairie dog tripping the other prairie dog? But actually,
I love that. These are females. That's what I liked about it.
it's very unusual.
Tell
You could
us what they're
see,
fighting over.
I'm not really sure. They might be protecting their young, or it might be a territorial type dispute.
Well, they steal each other's stuff that they do
Nesting.
for the nesting material and all that, and they steal. They like to steal like many other animals. And but this dance thing, this is just amazing that you got that.
Thank you very much. In fact, most of the fights I got were males, so this was pretty fun. I thought it was great that you liked the girl fight.
Oh, I love the girl fight. I've seen plenty of males fighting, but this one,
Oh, I
this
mean, the
was
females
artistic.
fight over the males, huh? Oh, that's good. I'm all
That's
for
a
that.
reverse. And then in the next shot's another action shot, and this was a very pretty difficult one to get. It's a fox.
No, that is my
Charging
absolute favorite, is this one here. So this picture here.
Oh, well,
This was hard to get. This was hard to get.
this is not a lucky shot.
No,
I
no,
want-
no.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that.
Nope.
It's not a lucky shot. What did you have to do to get that shot?
Well, I can tell you it took a lot of focus and it took some mistakes. What happened is the prairie dogs are in a colony. And one morning the fox was seen. And I had a feeling it might charge at the prairie dogs, and it did, but I missed the shot. I was distracted. John Hoagland said something like, "Elaine, look over there." So I turned my camera when I should have only turned my eyes. And right when I turned my camera, I heard everybody on the walkie-talkie, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. A fox came out, charged at a prairie dog, and then it dove into a hole and got away. But I did get a portrait of the fox because it looked pretty depressed after it missed its
So he
meal.
missed his meal.
But I was pretty depressed too, and I was pretty hard on myself. And weeks later, I waited for weeks for another opportunity. And sometime around dawn or 8 o'clock in the morning, the fox was maybe seen in the colony, and then it disappeared into the forest. Nobody was really sure, nobody had seen the fox all day, but the prairie dogs were acting funny, you know, and once you know your animal, you start to read it. They were not interacting. They were not moving very far from their holes. They were not eating. And so I spent all day on my belly, on a thermarest mattress, on a sheet of ice and snow, determined to get a photo if the fox ran out. And I didn't eat, I didn't drink. I hate to say it, but I had a full bladder and I was laying on my stomach using a bean bag to balance my camera. And at about 4:20 p.m., 35 miles an hour, the fox ran out of the forest.
Ugh.
And at that time, my camera only took 5 or 6 shots in rapid succession, and I got chase, 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 mouth open, mouth closed.
And so this one was with the mouth over right
Yep.
before the kill. So
I
he
love
didn't,
this shot.
Thank you.
The prairie dog didn't, this one didn't get away then.
Right.
Now, most of the researchers were in towers that were built. I guess that's a permanent thing at Bryce. They have these towers that other scientists can come and use, or was it built just for these researchers that did the book?
Yeah, it was built just for these researchers. Dr.
nice.
John Hoagland takes these towers in a trailer to each site he visits.
Okay.
He did 11 years at Bryce Canyon. Now he's at a site in New Mexico studying a different species of prairie dog.
But now for you, you were not limited to the towers. You could move around.
Yeah, I could move around, but I did it kind of carefully because walking about will make the prairie dogs run and hide or give alarm calls, like as if you were danger. But I was actually stationed in the winter time on the snow on a box that was below John's tower, and I lay on my belly and used a beanbag to balance my tripod. But then what would happen is the snow melted, and so all the sagebrush and the grasses were now visible, and the prairie dogs would run in and out, and your camera would refocus. So I started using the towers, and I even used my old little Nissan Altima as a prairie dog blind. The rangers didn't like it, but I pulled over to the side and shot out the window.
Oh, really, really neat. Well, I could go on and on and on about the prairie dogs. There's so much. And reading it, this, I mean, they could do their own series, you know, like those other popular things that sit up, you know. They could do their own
like the Meerkat
reality.
Manor.
They could do their own reality show. I'd like to go on and on about that. But aside from doing the prairie dog book, you also do photo essays. And you also do online articles, and it just so happens we have some of your subjects here. I think the first one coming up is a hummingbird.
That's correct.
Do we have a hummingbird? There he
This
is.
little Anna's hummingbird is sitting on her nest, and if you can imagine, her nest is about the size of a ping pong ball. That's how small it is.
Very small.
And what I did is I made a project out of documenting all parts of this hummingbird's family life. I got her creating the nest, I got her sitting on the eggs and having the chicks.
So cute.
Feeding the chicks. And in the next photo,
Now on your website, I went on there and I actually was able to see the whole series. It shows you where to go where you can see the whole series. So
Right.
there is a whole bunch.
right, these are the chicks. They're about 22 days old. And if you will see, one of them is perched up on the rim of the nest. By the next day, it had fledged.
Oh, it's so big, you know.
So I stuck around the second day and got a picture of the one in the middle of the nest fledging a couple days later.
Oh.
There's a YouTube video where I go into more detail about
yes.
how I took the photos.
Excellent.
And I just got some good news. I got a yes from a publisher on this being a children's book as well.
Oh, that's wonderful,
Oh, yeah, we're gonna
wonderful.
talk
Thank you.
That is just great. So then the next one we have here is, I think, is it the monarch?
Yeah, it shows monarch butterflies.
Whoa.
They were found clustering in an area of Berkeley by the hundreds in a park they hadn't been seen in before. This article got 21,000 shares on Facebook.
Oh, that's
It went
wonderful.
viral, and it really made me feel good that butterflies were that popular, that many people cared about
Oh,
butterflies.
people love butterflies. They're just gorgeous.
And then the last two photos, one of them is the close-up of this eagle. I happened to be at the Lindsay Wildlife Museum and Hospital when the eagle was brought in.
That's in Walnut Creek?
That's
Walnut
correct.
Creek, okay.
That's correct. And the eagle was brought in. She had a wing injury and she actually got sick. But they fixed her up and invited me weeks later. In the next photo, you will see she was released back to nature.
Oh, there she goes. There she
One
goes.
of my favorite.
Really,
And she
really
wears a
neat.
radio telemetry pack so that we can follow her movements.
Oh, yeah. So you have, you just mentioned that you got accepted for a book, and that's coming out in October?
No.
Yes, I
Oh,
have
that
a-
one too? You have
oh,
another one.
Oh,
The
it's
other book is
another
called
book.
Running
Oh.
Wild. And I
Yeah.
think we have a book
We
cover. of it.
do. Let's see
Yeah.
that.
I just got this from the publisher, so I'm so absolutely thrilled. It's called Running Wild, and it's from my favorite
This is the cover.
publisher, Heyday
Okay.
Books in Berkeley.
All right.
And it's going to be published this October. And it
And this guy running across here is a
is a Douglas squirrel.
Douglas. Douglas! I didn't know they named a squirrel after him.
And it's, I sort of think of myself as a sports photographer for animals, so all the photos in the book show photos of animals in motion.
We have a couple other pictures here, don't we?
Yes,
From
we
the-
do. I
let's see a
think
couple
the
more.
first one is a deer,
Deer.
and little children will learn that fun action verb prance.
This is for
Oh,
children, and
okay.
this next book is for children.
Yeah, these will be board books with the cardboard pages for like the really young
Yes,
youngsters.
easy for them to,
Yeah,
a
and
way
then-
of introducing them to animals, a little different than the normal.
yeah, introducing them to animals and fun ways to move around. In the next one, I show Flutter. The next photo. This was one of the hardest pictures to get.
Beautiful.
A
Look
monarch
at the
on the
colors.
wing.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, I go to the butterfly houses and, you know, this
That's
trying to take pictures, and this is fabulous.
And another fun action verb is prowl. And in the next photo, we'll see one of my favorite animals.
Bobcat?
Yeah, that is a
Bobcat?
bobcat. And I took it not far from
Bobcat.
here in Pinnacles National Park.
Oh, Pinnacles is so beautiful.
And so the goal of this book is not only to teach kids about animals, it's to teach them that no matter how you move about, if you swim or dash or run or scamper or glide, there's always one more way that's fun to do it, and that is with friends.
And I think behind us, this scrub jay, isn't that from the Pinnacles?
That's also from Pinnacles.
And that's from the book too, isn't it?
That's from another book for the next year. I actually got 2 books coming
You're
out.
getting to be very prolific here when you're writing. Oh, wow.
So he's a scrub jay and he's at the Pinnacles too.
He is, and it has to do with animals and their habitats. What is your favorite place?
Well, I just want to thank you so much for being here. It was just so many animals. I'm just very, very happy.
We could go on for hours.
I could go on for hours. So anyway, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank everybody out there for watching the show. And when you're observing an animal out there, please notice the characteristics and see what's unique about that animal. And then if there's anything that you like that's positive that you would like to have for yourself, think about how you could apply that to yourself. And hopefully it's something positive, right?
Yeah.
There's some behaviors you don't want to do. So anyway, thanks for watching the show. If you check Elaine's website, there's more pictures and more information, and you can see some of these photo essays that she does. So thanks for watching the show, and watch again. Could you sign this for us?
Oh, yes, and thank you for having me, too.